Hello everyone and welcome to Team COG. My name is Flexy, and once again, Charles, thank you very much for having me and giving me the opportunity to once more talk about my favorite deck of all time pretty much, which is Pendulum Magicians. And especially with the new ban list, there's a lot of changes to this deck, so let's not waste any more time and hop right into it. Now, in the main deck, the very first change that you can see right here is the Astrograph Sorcerer, which we have freshly gotten off of the ban list. This is extremely huge for the strategy because the Pendulum Magicians already revolve around destroying their own cards and profiting off of that. And also he's a Dark Spellcaster. He's a level 7, so he enables other extra deck plays than before as well. But he's only at 1 copy, so it's not very consistent to have access to him. That's why we also play 3 copies of Wavering Eyes. Wavering Eyes destroys both of your Pendulum scales, works extremely well with Double Iris Magician, and then you can add a Pendulum monster to your hand, and if you search Astrograph Sorcerer after resolving Wavering, or by resolving Wavering Eyes, you immediately trigger the Astrograph Sorcerer as well, so you want to resolve those effects as often as possible. They grant you huge amounts of advantage. Now to the main Magician package, there's 3 Skulker Red Joker, which is the normal summon of the deck and also freshly gotten off the ban list. Before this ban list it was a 2. Not much to say here really. 3 normal summons adds you any Magician monster that you could need. Then there's 2 Oath Dragon Magicians, which is the best low scale on the deck because it adds a Magician monster from your face-up extra deck to your hand once per turn, which is huge of course. You could play it at 3 as well, but I feel like that's not really necessary because you have enough access by Joker, Star Pendulum Graph, and Wisdom Eye. And it's not the best Magician otherwise because you can't normal summon it, for example, or at least not without a tribute. Then 3 Wisdom Eyes. Wisdom Eye transforms itself into any Pendulum monster in your scale or any Magician Pendulum monster in your scale by destroying itself, which is also good because it triggers Star Pendulum Graph and Astrograph Sorcerer. But it also just functions as a blanket Pendulum scale, pretty much whatever you might need in that situation. Then there's 3 Double Iris Magician. Once destroyed, it adds you one of the Pendulum Graphs, which is huge for the deck. And also makes up like the main part of the engine on the opponent's turn as well. And then finally, we have 3 Harmonizing Magician, which once Pendulum summoned from the hand, you can summon a Magician Pendulum monster from deck, which is not only a +1, but also a combo enable, and also it's a tuner monster. It's level 4, so your possibilities in terms of the extra deck combos with this card are pretty much endless. These are the main Magician monsters, and with Joker, which is not a Magician monster, sadly, but it still searches the other one, so it's good enough. And then, also as part of the main Magician lineup, you have 3 Duelist Alliance, which pretty much searches half of the deck. You have a Star and a Time Pendulum Graph. Star Pendulum Graph searches to a Pendulum Magician monster once per turn, and Time Pendulum Graph can, under certain circumstances, remove 2 cards from your opponent's field, which is pretty cool. Which are also searchable, by the way, by Duelist Alliance, but mostly they're going to be searched by Double Iris Magician being destroyed, which is the main goal of the deck, pretty much. You could also play them like at 2 each, or maybe 1 Star Graph, 2 Time Graph, or something like that, especially because once your opponent removes one of them, you don't have a way of getting them back from the graveyard. But I don't really think it's necessary, and while opening them does help you sometimes, I don't really want to do that in most cases, so I like to play them at 1 and 1. It's usually enough. So other honorable Magician monsters, I guess you could say, is 2 Purple Poison. Purple Poison doesn't grant you any immediate advantage, that's why I wouldn't like to play it at 3. But having more than 1 copy of it is pretty good, because if you have to go second, then normal summoning it and maybe getting rid of 1 of you or 2 of your opponent's interruptions is pretty good. Also having their scale effect to boost 1 of your monsters and just not having to rely on 1 of the copies is pretty good. Then there's 2 Celestial Magician, which adds you a Pendulum monster in your end phase, which is pretty good. Sadly, it's in the end phase, so it doesn't help you like establish a combo or something, but it's still good for follow-up. And also the scale effect allows you to revive a Fusion, Synchro, or Xyz monster if it gets destroyed while this card is in your scale, which is pretty cool, especially with We're on the Floor or something like that, or a Time Star Magician. But yeah, as I said, it doesn't generate any immediate advantage, so playing it at 2 is probably good enough. And then I play 1 Black Fang Magician, which I mainly play for the scale effect, which halves the attack points of an opponent's monster, which can help you get rid of some of your opponent's main problem cards on the field. Then there's 1 Dragon Pit Magician, which is also a high scale and can function as back row removal, but I mainly play him for the level 7, just so I have more consistent access to the Absolute Dragon, and the Vortex Dragon by extension. And then the final magician piece, I could say, even though it's not a Pendulum magician monster, is Tuning Magician, which is our needle fiber target and can revive itself if you control 2 magician monsters in your scales, which you pretty much always want to do, right? Yeah, that's about it for the magician cards. And now we're getting into the extender package, which consists of 3 Dragon Shrine and 1 Foolish Burial. These are going to send Supreme King Dragon Darkworm into the graveyard, and once he special summons himself, you can search the Gate 0, which is also 11/7 by the way, but it's also a 0 scale, so the lowest scale you can have pretty much. And also as an alternative sending target, you have the YuGiOh, which is also gotten off of the ban list freshly, and he is pretty much just a Hulk enabler. So if you say normal summon Joker and you don't have access to another extender, you can use the YuGiOh to, or you know, if you open the Dragon Shrine, or even the YuGiOh itself. The YuGiOh isn't even really a break. He's just a good extender from hand as well. You can use that to go into Hulk Fibrax plays without having to normal summon something like Harmonizing Magician. You could replace this entire package, which consists of 7 cards, with the 3 Chronograph, 1 Time Gazer Magician package, which is also a very good extender, maybe even a better extender under certain circumstances. And then you could also play like another tuner or 2 instead of the in place of the 3 free cards that you have right now. But personally, I'm trying out this right now, and it's pretty good because this pluses you, as opposed to the Chronograph Sorcerer package, which is just 1 card replacing itself for an extender pretty much. So yeah, I like this one so far, but the other alternative is the Chronograph package. And then the final cards are Luster Pendulum, which is a 1-off currently. You can special summon him off of the Ignister Prominence effect. He's a normal summon, so technically you can also normal summon it to go into Hulk Fibrax. But there's also a very cool line of play, which I'm going to show you after the profile, including this card. That's why I've also considered bumping this up to 2 or even 3. The problem is that it's a little too specific, personally, because you need this card, Wavering Eyes, and Double Iris Magician in your hand to for this to work. So, and especially because Wavering Eyes isn't searchable, as opposed to this one and Double Iris, I kind of feel like it's not really worth it to rely on that combo mainly. But it's still an interesting play nonetheless. And the final 2 cards are Upstart Goblin and Called by the Grave. Upstart Goblin, of course, to thin out the deck, and also because it's a very good additional spell counter for Celine, because sometimes you're not going to be able to have like a spell card in grave. That's why Upstart Goblin is pretty good. And then Called by the Grave, of course, against hand traps. Sadly, it's at 1. I would play it at 5 if I could, but you know, ban list is not too friendly to us. And playing Crossout Designator with Droll or something like that, I might play Prohibition instead of Called by the Grave, and then like take 2 other cards out. Maybe I'm gonna switch back to the Chronograph package and then play 3 copies of Prohibition to keep out things like Droll or Nibiru, because I hate playing around Nibiru. It just limits our combos so much, and opening Prohibition would pretty much solve that problem entirely, but I still haven't tested it yet, so take that with a grain of salt. Now to the extra deck.
Alright guys, quick announcement. If you guys want to help support the channel, you can do so by using the TCG Player affiliate link down below. Using that link will give a little bit of kickback to the channel, costing you nothing extra while helping to support the Crusade, am I right? And then if you guys also want to help support the channel, check out the Imperium Duelist link down below. Using the code TEAM COG10 will give you 10% off your orders at checkout, and I'm a huge supporter of their products, from their deck boxes to their dice to their sleeves to their mats to everything. I've just been a huge advocate for their products for quite some time. Finally, if you guys want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a member, get access to member-only perks and rewards. Every live stream that we do gets uploaded for members only after the live stream is over with, and you get access to custom emotes and just, you know, become part of a wholesome family. But anyway, guys, back to the video.
I have Time Star Magician, which is of course the main monster of the deck, you could pretty much say. He searches your card, so he's a +1. He protects your scales from being destroyed once per turn, and this also allows you to turn the Time Pendulum Graph into 2 disruptions instead of 1, which is pretty good. And the second one is even non-target, non-destruction, so that's insanely strong. Ignition Prominence, also non-target, non-destruction removal. Also special summons a tuner monster from deck, which you could use for Hulk plays to climb into Access Code, for example. That's also huge. Then there's Odd Eyes Absolute Dragon, which, if he leaves the field, summons Vortex Dragon from the extra deck. And if you manage to do that on the opponent's turn by using IP Masquerena, Vortex even bounces a card from the field to the hand. So using IP and Absolute turns them into 2 to 3 interruptions, depending on what you link into. And other than that, this is an Omni Negate on field, which also recurs one of your extra deck monsters from the face-up extra deck to the deck, or one of your Pendulum monsters, I should say. Which is also very good, especially for one-offs. Like if you have Astrograph in your extra deck, you barely ever have a way to like retrieve him, so that's pretty cool. Then there's Grand Sulfur Court Musisia, which I also tried testing out because of Astrograph being at 1. If you have a way to trigger him multiple times, but you don't have a way of getting him back, you can just go into Musisia, trade him for one of your cards in your hand, and then trigger him again to add another card. So that's pretty cool. Also, it's just a generic link too. It doesn't require a tuner. So yeah, if you need the zones, if you don't have a tuner on field, Musisia is doing a pretty good job at that. And finally, for the Pendulum and Spellcaster related extra deck monsters, there's 2 Selene, pretty much for climbing into Appaloosa turn 1 or Access Code turn 2 and onwards. Just so I'm safe and I don't have to choose either of the two, I play 2 copies of Selene. So that's it for the Pendulum Spellcaster related extra deck part. Now the following are just generic, like negates and stuff. There's Baron the Floor, which is an Omni Negate. It pops a card, so it does everything that Pendulum Magicians want to do. I played Dawn Dragster because with the Destrudo being off the list, you pretty much always have at least access to a free rank 7 Synchro. And while I usually use the Destrudo as Hulk Fibrax material, there might be a situation where I just have to use it as a Synchro material for anything, and then I think Dragster is the best target for that. Dweller is a situational extra deck monster for sure, but in those situations where he comes up, he is pretty much game winning. That's why I almost never take him out, depending on the format, of course. And in this format specifically, with PK and stuff running around, I think this is a really strong extra deck monster. Hulk Fibrax, I don't like him as much as I did like half a year ago, because Pendulum Magicians kind of started moving away a little bit from being super Hulk Fibrax focused. But if you want to ensure that you play around or at least through Nibiru, then Hulk Fibrax is absolutely mandatory, and you should definitely change this specific build that I've presented you in this video a little bit so you have more tuner access and a little bit more extender access as well. IP Masquerena in combination with the Nightmare Unicorn, Appaloosa, and Access Code. These two, most importantly, but these two as well, all work together. IP Masquerena, as I've said before, you can link away the Absolute Dragon to trigger the Vortex on your opponent's turn to bounce a card. You can turn it into Unicorn to shuffle another card. You can turn it into Appaloosa on your opponent's turn for like 3 or even 4 monster negates maybe. You can technically also play Underworld Goddess. I forgot the entire name, but Underworld Goddess, the link 5 monster that takes a monster from your opponent's field as material, which is also pretty good. You can technically also even link away into X-Code Target, which is pretty good because he's going to have like 5-3 or 6-3 attack points, and you can't be destroyed by card effects, so that's almost even the towers at that point. But also it's generic link too, so if you ever feel a need to have the zones and you already used your Musisia, for example, then you still have the IP Masquerena. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the deck profile. And now, just to finish off the video, I'm going to talk about the little combo that I've mentioned before, including Wavering Eyes, Double Iris Magician, or any way into Double Iris Magician really. So for example, Joker searching Double Iris Magician, or Star Pendulum Graph triggering searching Double Iris Magician, or Duelist Alliance, anything of the sort is gonna do the trick. But I'm gonna perform this very basic version. So Lusted Pendulum has a scale effect, which barely ever comes up in Pendulum Magicians because it doesn't really help us having him in our scale. But with Wavering Eyes, being able to get rid of him, it can come up. So his effect is that you can destroy the other card that you control in your Pendulum scale and add the same copy, a copy of that same card to your hand. So you destroy Double Iris, add another Double Iris to your hand, and that is going to trigger Double Iris's effect to add a Star or Time Pendulum Graph. Then you're going to search the Star Pendulum Graph, activate it, activate another Double Iris Magician, and then you activate Wavering Eyes, destroying the other 2 copies cards in your Pendulum zones, adding to your hand the Astrograph Sorcerer, and then Astrograph is going to trigger. Actually, Star Pendulum Graph is going to be channeling 1 because it's mandatory. Then Astrograph is going to be channeling 2, and Double Iris that you once again destroyed is going to be channeling 3. Now keep in mind, if you try to do this in like Master Duel or EGR Pro, this is not going to work that way exactly, because cards that trigger in private knowledge pretty much, so in your hand for example, cannot be activated in a chain before cards that are public knowledge, which are Star Pendulum Graph and Double Iris in this case. So on EDO Pro or Master Duel, you would have to do chaining 1 Star Pendulum Graph, chaining 2 Double Iris, and chaining 3 Astrograph. But in the TCG, as far as I'm aware, you are able to change the chain links accordingly. So Star Pendulum Graph has to be chaining 1 because it's mandatory, but then chaining 2 Astrograph is better because you still get the extender, so it can't be ashed. And then Double Iris Magician is going to add you the Time Pendulum Graph, and barely anyone ever ashes a Double Iris Magician. So Chainlink 3, double iris, as I said, searches you the other Pendulum graph. Then Chainlink 2, Astrograph Special Summons itself, searches you the double iris Magician, since you only play one copy of Luster Pendulum and you don't even need a Luster Pendulum at that point. Though, if you played multiple copies, you could search a Luster Pendulum and normal summon it, so you have tuner access for the Hulk Fibrax, which is kind of cool actually, but yeah, and then double iris in your hand. So this is your hand right now, this is your board state, and then Star Pendulum Graph is going to trigger, or to resolve actually, and search you another Magician monster. And now, this combo has started with 3 cards in hand, which means you would still have 2 cards in your hand, and depending on what those cards are, that's going to decide what you're searching off of the Star Pendulum Graph. So for example, if you already have a low scale, like a Wisdom Eye for example, or an Oath Dragon Magician, either of the two really, then you can just search Harmonizing off of this, and then have a stronger Pendulum summon. If you already have access to the Harmonizing Magician, then I would recommend you search one of those. So pretty much the main game plan with Pendulum Magicians is always having access to Oath Dragon at the low scale, both Pendulum Graphs, Harmonizing in the hand for Pendulum summoning, and then a high scale, of course, a Magician high scale, ideally because of Tuning Magician. So in this case, let's just imagine that you have access to an Oath Dragon Magician, and like any random card, let's say Upstart Goblin, or actually let's say Called by the Grave, then you just search off of the Star Pendulum Graph, the Harmonizing, and then you can normal summon it, link it away for Hulk Fibrax, climb into Appaloosa, and then you have 5 cards in your extra deck, 1 actually because you're adding Harmonizing off of the Oath Dragon, and you get a Pendulum, summon 5 monsters, and perform your combo. So yeah, that's just an interesting line of play that I wanted to show you guys. It's really specific and kind of convoluted as well, and doesn't play around Droll at all. So it's pretty dangerous, but it enables many plays that you, or actually not even many plays, but it's just, it pluses you very hard because you get to destroy double iris twice. Yeah, and also trigger Astrograph and stuff like that. So definitely keep that in mind if you do try out this list of mine that I've presented to you in this video. And other than that, guys, if you have any questions, then leave them in the comments. I'm going to read the comments and respond to them as well. Subscribe to Team COG's channel. They do a lot of good work, especially Charles with his remote duels. He's always trying to improve his quality of content and the variety of duels that he does and decks that he's presenting. And once again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present my deck in front of your audience. And other than that, guys, see you next time.